Imagine looking into your home a year from now and there's another man there playing with your children. Yes, your children, the ones whose first steps you witnessed. They jump excitedly and land in his lap, and then they throw their little arms around his neck as he tucks them into the beds that you built for them. Their little voices say the words you thought belonged only to you. I love you so much, Daddy. You're the best daddy in the world. You will yourself to turn away, but you can't. It's like watching your own funeral. You're transfixed as he moves down the hallway to what was once your sanctuary. Your wife waits for him there. Not the tired woman who collapses beside you nightly, armored in creams, towels, and cucumber slices. This woman has shed all barriers. Her skin is bare, her eyes liquid with anticipation, and her body curves towards him like a river finding its valley. When she looks at him, you see a hunger you've forgotten existed in her. She locks the door. Yep, the one you installed to keep the world out, and now it keeps you out too. Her mouth finds his. Not in the token greeting you've grown accustomed to, but in a kiss that contains histories, futures, secrets. A kiss that speaks in a language you once knew, but you've forgotten how to translate. And they move to the bed. The one you've lain countless nights, separated by inches that stretched into chasms, but there is no chasm between them now. Their bodies move in perfect communion. Each touch electric with intention, each moment saturated with presence. This isn't the dutiful date night coupling that marks your calendar. This is worship. His hands trace the landscape of her body with reverence and wonder. Her sighs rise like music composed only for him. Her breath catches his name like a symphony. You watch, unable to turn away from your undoing as tears gather in her eyes. Not tears of obligation or performance, but of truly being seen, truly known. As pleasure crests through her body, one tear drops and lands on his chest, and he lays her down and looks at her with concern. She looks back at him with eyes that once held your entire world and whispers, I just love you so much. I wish I'd met you sooner. And the most brutal truth is written across her entire being, in the abandon of her body, in the defenselessness of her gaze, in the tremor in her voice. She means it with every cell, every breath, every secret corner of her soul. This is not duty, not compromise. This is not making do. This is revelation. How did this happen? Let's watch the same story again, but switch out only one character. You. Here's what that might look like. The side eye when she starts up about that broken cabinet again. The tuning out when she tells that story, you know, the one that you've heard for the 12th time. The heavy sigh when she asks you again if you called about the gutters. It's a constant disappointment, the feeling that nothing you do is ever enough, the exhaustion of trying to please someone who seems impossible to please. You're a good man, you work hard, you provide, you resent your thankless duties, but you do them anyway, most of them. But in your time, not because she nags you. You stay when others might leave, and still somehow you've become the villain in your own home. I know that quiet resentment, the one you don't talk about with anyone. How the woman who once looked at you with wonder and desire now looks at you with what? Disappointment? Indifference? How the softness in her voice has hardened. How the benefit of the doubt has become the assumption of the worst. Man, I get it. I've been there. That feeling that you're trapped in a game you can't win, that you've somehow become the enemy of the woman you swore to love. Then, one day, a man notices her at the grocery store, or the gym, or through friends. This man, whoever he is, he sees something in her that catches his attention. Let's watch what happens next. This man starts showing up in her world. At first, it's just coffee, conversations, nothing serious. But he finds himself thinking about her when she's not around. He wonders, what would make her smile? What would ease her load? So he fixes that broken cabinet, the one you meant to get to. And when he's there, he notices the gutters. Fixes those and cleans them too. He listens. He really listens when she tells that story you've heard a dozen times. He finds it charming, fascinating even. When your kids act up, he's patient, present, not buried in his phone. And at night, this man holds the woman you once held. He touches her with the reverence you lost somewhere along the way. He looks at her. He really looks at her the way you used to, and slowly she blooms under his gaze. She laughs more. She softens. She returns to herself. The woman this man sees bears little resemblance to the nagging disappointment you remember. This woman is vibrant, sensual. She's alive, and you're forced to watch it all, her second spring from a distance. Now here's the question that should haunt you. Haunted me when I woke up one night after dreaming up this painful little nightmare. What changed? Did she fundamentally transform after you left? Did her DNA rearrange, her personality rewire? No. She is the same woman. The woman who drives you crazy with her demands is the same woman who lights up when he fixes the cabinet without being asked. The woman whose stories bore you to tears is the same woman whose voice captivates him. The woman you've stopped seeing is the one he can't take his eyes off of. The difference isn't her. The only difference is the eyes that are seeing her. Remember when you first saw her? Not just with your eyes, but with your entire being. She radiated something ineffable. And in that moment, mountains seemed climbable, oceans seemed crossable. You would have moved the world for her. You were a detective of her joy then, a scholar of her being. Now you're an expert in her flaws, a connoisseur of her shortcomings. She always, why can't she just? What was once magical becomes mundane. The woman who inspired poetry now just reminds you about trash day. The smile that once lit your world now barely registers, not because she changed, but because your eyes did. We stop seeing the wonder. We stop feeling the inspiration. And slowly our service to love dwindles. Jobs left undone. Words left unsaid. Moments left uncelebrated. She hasn't changed nearly as much as your vision has. The disaster isn't that we lose our love, it's that we lose our sight. And that man, he's not better than you. He's not more skilled. He is only less blind. The tragedy isn't that someone else might someday cherish what you have. The tragedy is that you already possess what you stopped cherishing. It happens so quietly, so gradually. We become blind to wander through the quiet crime of a familiarity. The hand that once trembled at the miracle of touching her now brushes past her skin without memory. The ears that once savored every syllable from her lips now filter her voice like background noise. The eyes that once traced her outline like a map to treasure now look through her like glass, not because love died, but because awe did, and in its place grew the quiet violence of unseeing. This isn't entirely your fault. It's the peculiar curse of being human, probably the cruelest joke of consciousness. What once filled us with wonder eventually becomes wallpaper. The sunset that once stopped your breath becomes just another end of the day. The music that once moved you becomes just another playlist you skip through impatiently. The child whose first steps seemed like a miracle sent from the stars becomes just another voice asking for money, for rides, for time you've already allocated elsewhere. The feast that once awakened every sense becomes fuel, measured in calories and macros. The home that felt like the culmination of ancient dreams becomes a structure requiring maintenance, a carcass for the collection of forgotten possessions. This is how wonder dies, not in catastrophe, but in quiet increments. Not because the miracle fades, but because our eyes grow callous to the glory. This blindness isn't a moral failing, and it's not a character flaw unique to you. It's the tax we pay on time, the slow dulling of perception that happens when wonder isn't deliberately maintained. No one taught us this, though. No father passed down this wisdom. No mentor warned us that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't losing love, it's losing sight of what's in front of you. So you become reactive. You service only what's needed or nagged. You become the mule reaching for the carrot you know you'll never get because you're afraid of the whip that you will get if you don't. It's about service. Other men will tell you that service is your obligation, that fixing, building, providing is your duty, a weight to carry, a debt to pay. That's a lie. We don't serve out of duty. We serve because it lights us on fire. Do you remember that? How it felt when her smile could fuel you through a 12-hour workday. When you'd notice a broken hinge and fix it before she mentioned it, not to avoid her complaint, but because the mere act of making her world better made you feel alive. That wasn't weakness, that was power. Raw, masculine power, the same force that built civilizations. Men create because creation is our nature. Men protect because protection is our blood. Men provide because provision is our purpose. Young men volunteer to go to military service to potentially die. Why? For service to something they love, their country, their family, their home. The male drive to service isn't some cultural programming, it's in our DNA. We come alive when we create, protect, provide, not because we're trained to, but because we're built to. But we've been sold the lie that our service is a burden, that noticing, fixing, building for her is a weakness, when in truth, it's where our greatest strength lives. Look around your house now. See all the broken things you've stopped seeing? The loose doorknob, the leaky faucet, the unfinished project, the dusty weights in the corner, the gut hanging over your belt. Those aren't just tasks. They are monuments to your blindness. The tragedy isn't that we stop loving our women, it's that we stop seeing them. And what we don't see, we can't serve. And what we don't serve, we can't love. But someone else will. And they'll do it with the fire and energy that you once had. So who is this man, this intruder in your future, this thief of joys you once possessed? He's not your replacement. He's not your rival. He's not even your successor. He is you. He is you before the blindness. He is you before the dulling. He is you when you still knew how to see. He's not new, he's remembered. He lives in your skin. He uses your hands. He sees through your eyes, but only when you remember how to look. Your wife hasn't changed her fundamental nature. Your children haven't stopped needing your presence. Your home hasn't lost its capacity for wonder, only your vision has faltered. And vision can be restored. Not through grand gestures, not through flowers after an argument, not through promises spoken but abandoned, but through the simple, brutal practice of seeing again, of looking at your child's face when they speak as if nothing else exists, of noticing, truly noticing the woman who still sleeps beside you before time turns her into a stranger. That man isn't your future unless you choose blindness over vision. That man's not your replacement. That man is inside you, waiting for you to remember how to see.